Why China is unloading U.S. treasuries as of late. China bought a lot of U.S. Treasury bonds during the period of ZIRP zero interest rate policy. I think they were the biggest or second biggest foreign holder of U.S. Treasury. Now, as the interest rate has been rising, China has been selling a lot of U.S. Treasuries since 2022. Isn't this the classic buy high, sell low? The more they sell, the more loss they realize. Why can't they hodl? It's simple, they need the money. China has been going through an economic slowdown for the past few years. And selling U.S. treasuries is one way to raise cash. They may be losing money on their investment, but it's better than defaulting on their debts or having to print even more yuan, which would further devalue their currency. Sun Tzu say, sell your enemy's securities at a loss so they think you're an idiot. They are selling U.S. Treasury at loss to pay debtors' USD-denominated coupon for real estate debt. That is collapsing like a house of cards. They're shoring up capital to plug in their holes in the real estate bubble. Bruh. China's economy is dog shit right now. They need to pump the cash into their economy, so they need to free up cash. Also, U.S. Treasuries have been a loser. So many banks that held onto U.S. bonds have billions of unrealized losses. China too. One of us. They have been openly trying to diversify for years. They are currently cash-strapped and want to be less dependent on the dollar. It's not a verdict on the U.S. economy. Look what happened to Russia's holdings of U.S. treasuries. It's better to sell something at a discount than to lose 100 of it. The U.S. has shown that it can arbitrarily freeze your assets at will. U.S. treasuries carry a huge amount of political risk to countries that are not allied to the U.S. Decoupling of economies usually means bad things on the horizon. Out of desperation, if nothing else. They didn't sell. They just let those long-term treasures mature, then don't buy new ones. They don't necessarily have to be selling. A lot of institutional holders of T-bills will decrease their exposure by simply letting the T-bills mature, which does not incur a loss. Absent some kind of short-term liquidity need, most institutional investors prefer this route of selling their T-bills, since it doesn't incur any transaction costs or result in a loss. For sovereign entities like a BOC, it largely doesn't make sense to liquidate T-bills since they likely don't have the short-term liquidity need, and it's much less costly to just let the bills sit till maturity and drop off their assets sheet over a very long time horizon. They want gold and oil instead. A way to fight back against sanctions. They need the foreign currency as economy is slowing. Chinese goals are beyond your understanding. Bottom line is they need the cash. The bonus for them is it screws us over. If a U.S. bank is picking those up, they're likely turning around and getting a loan at par to pick up extra yield at this point on new issues. X200B. Without knowing the parties to the transaction, hard to say whether they're getting a kickback or not. China has over 20 youth unemployment, so China belongs on this sub-confirmed. They are desperate to shore up a collapsing economy with dollars. Financial warfare. IMG emote T52TH 52 4271. U.S. Treasuries and USD reserve has been a necessary burden for China. In the event of Taiwan invasion, those assets will be frozen. But since China is an export-oriented nation, hence it has no choice but to accept dollar in return for exported goods. But it also wants to put cap on how much dollar it holds. So housing crisis in China, slow down in economy, scaling down US-denominated assets might be reason for selling treasury bills. They saw what happened to SVB and thought I rant some of that. No worries, we can always print up some more. They bought it high and sell it low. One of us. Desperate ones always lose. They are getting ready to go to war and know they won't get paid when that happens. You're welcome, world. It's the old ZERP and FLRP, I'm sure you've heard of it. You're thinking like somebody trying to make a profit, not somebody trying to destabilize their economic rival. Those securities are obligations the US has to pay back. China has $868 billion in US securities. That's $868 billion more that the US has to find other funding sources for. And at higher interest rates. It's not going to break the US by itself. But I'm guessing it's strategic, knowing we have another potential budget fight in Congress coming up. Eventually, we will collapse under the weight of our incredibly poorly planned financial system. China seems to be preparing to invade Taiwan. They don't want money tied into the US. Hope I'm wrong. China is fucked. Because they are broke. Proof that they are actually selling? My understanding is the value of their holdings are going down. Which is exactly what's happened to bond values in the last 2 years. Doesn't mean they've been selling. Only bagholding. They need the money. China needs the money to bail out their bankrupt real estate companies. Probably preparing for war. Their currency was in free fall for a bit. Because the US is printing new bonds at light speed. Have you ever bought a penny stonk dilution scam, maybe AMC? Dilution isn't pretty and an extra 2 doesn't make it pretty, lol. China has been stockpiling other assets like commodities, gold, oil, wheat, rice, etc. instead of US junk bonds. According to Eurodollar nerds, they need US dollars. They sell all the time. Maybe go ask Kevin McCarthy. Are they actually selling or just letting them mature and not rebuying? They have to make their currency stablecoin before they can take over us dollars. The BRICS is their promise they have to keep. Otherwise they could let those developers bankrupt. The world is dumping US treasuries. They've been unloading since 2015. Instead, they've been giving dollar loans all over the world for infrastructure projects. Many of these will be unable to make payments and China will end up owning infrastructure all over the world. It's a great play on their part. Genius. China is on the edge of a massive collapse. They need cash pronto. Puts on China. They will soon experience a like 1929 Great Depression. That's what they get for copying the USA. All the time without understanding what they are doing. China copying the USA leads them in the path of our history steps. It's an attack. They don't necessarily have to be selling. A lot of institutional holders of T-bills will decrease their exposure by simply letting the T-bills mature, which does not incur a loss. Absent some kind of short-term liquidity need. Most institutional investors prefer this route of selling their T-bills. Since it doesn't incur any transaction costs or result in a loss. For sovereign entities like a BOC, it largely doesn't make sense to liquidate T-bills since they likely don't have the short-term liquidity need, and it's much less costly to just let the bills sit till maturity and drop off their assets sheet over a very long time horizon. This is pretty much how it's gonna solve their debt issue. Country Garden. Because it ain't worth shit. Bruh. Maybe at yuan terms they are selling the ones ahead. Don't look at it in dollar terms. IMG emote T52TH52 4267. They had way too much money to know what to do with it. You can only build so many ghost towns before you get bored. Now they need it back.